years back. Dr. Fundlings is one of them. Charter Seat Company is another one. And when I was a small boy, I worked on Dr. Wilson's and L.L. Breckenridge's building. And I helped build McDonald, which is now owned by Dr. Saviors, headed lake over on the island over there on the peninsula. So you can take a look at construction on those. They're all different practically. Well, not all, but many of them are what they call a box corner. And that is your logs are squared off. And you make a frame out of 2x6s and 2x8s to nail on the side and on the ends of those logs to stand them up. The logs come in and they're nailed this way and they're nailed that way to them. And then they're boxed in with another piece over the other side and nailed in here. They're dressed down with an axe. Those days we didn't have chainsaws, so everything was with a two-man saw or one-man saw and an axe. And they have construction of the notch, like Dr. Fundling's house, a story and a half. It's all notched like that. It fits over the other, over top of the other log, which makes it.
What kind of a notch is that called?
It's a notch and saddle.
We've seen a lot of that.
And they're notched over so that this pulls this way, and they're put in with an eagle claw, two spikes on an angle, and they're hard to pull out. Then the next one goes over the top of it this way, and it pulls this way and locks it. They don't separate like a box and corner. They will shift, and you have to put turnbuckles and cables on them to straighten them up after 30 years or so. These others will stand for many, many years, 100 years, if the insects and so forth, they're taken care of and treated, and
You'd like to come to the table and fix your own.
Then they have a construction of sawed logs. They're sawed on three sides, leaving the round part out.
We've seen very little of that.
And one log butts against the other like that. And then the next log goes over the top of those this way, and the next one butts in on this side, so they're staggered.
Also, it alternates.
They're staggered. These notch and saddles that we did up there, they're so tight that you can't put a cigarette paper underneath them because they're put in with a keyhole saw. They're hollowed out and feather edged on the notch, and they're turned over on the log, and then you put them down with a keyhole saw all the way around on both sides, and it settles them down so that they're absolutely sealed. We didn't have the corking compounds that they have nowadays to seal them, but with the weight of the building and all, it goes into the other log and it makes a seal. Insects will get into them if they're not treated with insect repellent of some sort, like penta or something like that on the corners, or creosote and so forth.
A lot of the older buildings had split poles on the inside.
Well, those are chinking, called chinking. You lay your log up on top of the log that you've got, goes across and lays on top of the other, and you take a pair of calipers and you go along and you find the narrowest gap between. You open your calipers up until it touches the top log and the bottom log. Then you go to your corners and you hold that perpendicular. You go straight up and follow the log over and come down on the other side. Do the same on both sides, and that's your line to cut to. And you don't cut that line out. If you do, you've got a gap or a notch that's bigger than your log. If you hold it perpendicular, straight, a lot of them had a plumb, a little level on them, so that you could balance it and come straight up and follow the contour of the log wherever it went, and right back down.
The caliper
Then
had
you-
a level on it.
Hmm?
The caliper itself had a plumb.
A little level on it, I never did. I could just set up there and mark straight through and hold it up and go over the top and go underneath like that and go on the other side and do the same thing. You let the ends stick out so you've got some place to sit and work from, and you have scaffolding along on the outside of the building that you kept raising up so that you could walk along. And you had big dogs. They were on iron, 3 to 4 feet long, some of them 5 feet long, made out of steel, and they were turned on each end and sharpened so that you could drive them into this log and go across the corner and drive them into the other log. That held that log in place. It couldn't move. The only thing it could do would be to twist just a little bit, but if you drove a dog on each side, that log had to stay there while you marked it, and then you knocked your dog out, turned your log over, dogged it back, and then you'd sit there with an axe with a good heel on it, and you could chisel out an awful lot. They have now air chisels that they use, and you just like that, and hollow them out. You use a saw and saw down that close to your mark, and then you used an applewood mallet, big heavy applewood mallet, and a big 2-inch chisel. And then you had a slick. That's a big chisel about that long on a big handle that you could, or a gouge. And you gouged them out. Then when you were all through, you chalk lined the plate log, and you usually saved the 2 logs that were the straightest and held their size from one end to the other. And then you chalk lined along on that at a certain width. Like your building was 36 feet, you'd come out from this point to this point 36 feet, drive a nail, those 2 points, and then you'd go to the other end and do the same thing. Then you'd measure diagonally across it. If you held your building plumb, why, you weren't off very far. And then you chalk lined along that, and you dressed that down to receive your rafters. That made your plate. And your rafters were cut just like any rafter is cut and sets down over it, only a lot of them were made of poles, nice straight poles. Some of them are made of 2x6s and 2x8s on 2-foot centers or 16, whatever you wanted. Most of them were on 2-foot centers. Then you put your sheeting on, your shingles or shakes or whatever you wanted, and do the same with your gable ends.
Did you ever use dirt on roofs?
In the old days, yes. They built a log cabin and they used a notch this way and laid the log in it. And then they notched this one out and laid the log in it. And then they put poles from the peak. They put ridge logs in going across. They'd be 5 or 7 or 9. They're always odd number. And then they'd lay poles on those and nail them down and seal them with old boughs or hay or anything else, and then throw dirt on it. Make a dirt roof and a dirt floor. Some of the floors were made of blocks of wood, sawed and dug down in the dirt, and the blocks set on end. And they were dressed enough so that they fit in real good. Of course, the dirt would work in all the way around them, but I can show you one over on Warm Spring Creek. It goes into well, it's down below Boyle's Ranch and up Warm Spring Creek on the tributary that goes into Middle Fork. And it was an old ranger station, guard station, and it was a ranger station in those days. And the blocks on the floor are on end. And it's still standing. I don't know whether they'll ever preserve it or not for future people to look at.
We'd sure like it if they would preserve some of them.
But it's still there, and the blocks of wood, of course, will rot unless they're treated, you know, after many, many years. But they're just set on end, big logs, little logs, blocks, you know. They're dressed with an axe so that they go down and they level it off. That'd give you a floor instead of a dirt floor that you had to keep sprinkled down all the time to keep the dirt and dust from blowing around. Well, they had a wooden floor.
See, did they have any standard plans that they would use to build from? Or was it...
They would on big lodges or on your dwellings, yes. Everything fit in, you know, like if you were putting up a stairway and you had a 36-foot log like we did up here at Fundlings, you'd set up a couple of posts that were tied into the roof, and these posts were bored and scribed out so that the big log fit right straight in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to push them apart and then pull them together so that they would fit over the hole that you had in the big and then they were notched up here like that, the end of the stalls or big posts out on a porch, for an example, and they had a big log laid up there, and they were notched right in under this log and plumbed, and then you put your rafters onto that and your porch down underneath. And on the inside up there, the stairway goes up to where there's extra bedrooms, and all those are notched right into the walls or into these posts. They just kind of like a jigsaw, you know, or not a jigsaw, but these blocks that you use, you know, kids play with, puzzles and so forth. You put them together, and then there's one key that you pull out, and the rest of them all interlock. And that's the way these buildings were made. And you could continue on by stepping inside of your wall or stepping outside of your main wall a certain distance and go on another 30 feet. It's pretty hard to get logs over 30 feet.
How would you join them if you wanted to make a longer?
Well, you'd just take your partition. Your partition that goes through are made out of logs, and they come in here, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4 notches to make in this log instead of just 2 on the corners. And these partitions stick out over here, but they're cut flush in the middle. They stick out over here, and you put the log here going on for another addition, and then you can step back and go over the other way, and you, like you'd come over here, come in, go along here, go back out, go over here, and you could just keep going indefinitely if you wanted to. So you could make a building that would be 90 or 120 feet in length, all with the same notch and saddle construction. And
It seems like the newer buildings are, well, the logs are always fitted, you were saying. But when did they switch over from chinking them to fitting them flush?
well, you have mills here now that turn these logs to an 8-inch diameter, a 6-inch diameter. Naturally, those logs are straight, and it's just almost impossible. Of course, these logs are only 12 feet long, and you butt them end to end and chink them with this caulking compound and dowel them down with, you bore a hole and drive a drift pin in to hold them in place to keep them from rolling out. So you don't have the cracks, and then they're also curved underneath. They're milled so that they fit right over the log, see, just like that. They're milled. These are modern logs. They're not the old-time log that you'd go get out here in the timber. And you walk around the log and you look up at dry log, you know, and see if it's straight enough to make a 20 or 24 foot. I used to know just about, well, I could guess within a few inches of what a tree would make in the way of a log and hold its size. I've cut many a house log for people. And then you peel them with a draw knife when they're dead, or if you're making them out of green logs, which is, you can get straighter logs, but you've got to be awfully careful because they will warp and twist and turn when they're green unless you cover them and put them up on spacings so the air can get around them, and pile them real nice and weight them so that they don't twist and curl on you. Then you can put a crooked log in a window or a doorway and allow for it when you're putting the other log over. You know, you have to use your head. And then you go along and nail a 2x6 up there where you're going to cut a window. Spike it to each one of these logs. And then you take a 2-man saw, one on the outside of the building, one on the inside, and you cut right down that. And then you chop it all out with foot adze or an axe to make your window sills. And they cut those so exact that you could just put up a 2x6 or 2x8, whatever your wall was, or a 2x12 if necessary, that you planed by hand, made your framework, and your windows fit in there tight. There was no casing or anything made to put the windows in, and you still could raise the windows up and down or do whatever you wanted to with them, hinge them and shove them out.
Did most people have glass windows?
Oh yes. Yeah, they had glass windows and trapping cabins. They didn't. They had isinglass and a canvas or something like that for a door, and you'd get quite a bit of light through the door if you moved the canvas out of the way. And you burnt candles and kerosene lanterns or lights in trapping cabins, or carbide. A lot of carbide was used in the early days around here, just a little carbide that you filled and give you good enough light. And kerosene lights.
Did they use, homemade nails at all?
Well, in the early days they used a square nail. And you can find lots of those square nails like at Vienna Mine in the 80s. They didn't make the round nail. These were cast iron nail like they make nowadays to put in hardwood flooring. They use the little cast iron square nail. They've come back to it because it is better for putting in hardwood flooring. But they have all kinds of nails now, like the ring nails, the Scots nail, box nail, the common nail, and all of those are all different types of nails that they use. But they had the same classification on nails. It would be a 1 or a 2, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 penny, or 20 or 40 or 60 or 100 or 80, 100, 120 penny nails, pennyweight. And they were square, you big old square nails like that, little bitty fellows down that far. You know, they were all made just the same, only smaller. I have some around here I picked up at different places just for souvenirs, you know.
Do you know if they ever fasten anything together with wooden pegs?
Yes, you betcha. We still do. Dowel them. We used to make our own wooden pegs and drill a hole with an auger down through the logs or in the corners and put in a wooden peg in there and drive it in. Oh yes, yeah, till they rotted in two. You know, weather is hard on wood. Wood's a very perishable commodity. You've got to cut wood when it's ripe, and if you don't, then you lose it. And if you don't take care of it after you cut it, you still lose it. It rots, and the insects work on it, and mold and everything else. And mushrooms will grow on they're a parasite.
Mm-hmm.
So moisture and fungi play a big part in composing of wood materials. unless it's protected with a paint or a varnish or an oil or some way. That's why I'm treating all these fence posts up here that I'm building for dry rot on the outside. Of course, it'll last for 50 years. Now, longer than I'll live, that's for sure. But it'll still be there when my kids, or my daughter takes over. I believe in any fence that I build. When I was a kid, we used to put our posts in either green or dry, put the little end down. They would last a couple of years longer that way. They weren't treated in any way. About 5 or 6 years in this country here, they would rot off at the top of the ground. And as I grew up, it seems like every spring we'd put in a new stretch of fence after the first 6 years. You were rebuilding all that you built new in the years that you build them, see. So I made up my mind, if I ever put a post in the ground, it was going to stay there more than 86 years. So I treated every post that I stick in the ground. I never put in a post that isn't preserved. And I've got posts here that are 25 years old and still standing. So I don't have to go along and dig out those old rotted off ends of posts and replace it with another one every year and every year and every year. It runs into just a tiring job after a while. You have to go splice the wires and stuff like that, but posts don't rot off, that's for sure.
How early did they get barbed wire in here?
Oh, we've had barbed wire for a long time. Most of the old fences, we had different fences. There was a stake and rider fence. That was a post that had a hole bored through it on an angle, and then a sprag or a brace that was hewed down with an axe and fit into this 2-inch auger hole. Made a jack fence, as they called them. You put the poles up on the top and nailed it into the, and then you nailed the poles down the slanting post that you used. And they made different machines for doing that. Some of them had a pole made out of fir, a hole drilled in the end of it, and an auger put in and then bolted the end of the auger. And it had leather over the top as a bearing on both ends, and had a big wagon wheel on it with a handle on it that you could turn the wagon wheel. And you could slide it back because it was greased, lay your post in, and it fit in a trough on the right angle. You run the bit down again it and started turning it, and it would bore right through on the right angle. Every post was just the same. And then you'd pull it out, put in a new one, do the same thing, and then you'd make your jacks. Then they had another kind. You'd take 2 posts and lay them on the, you made a frame so that they were all the same. You marked them underneath and on top the way they cross, see, like that. Then you turn them over and you'd saw on your marks here, and then you'd chisel that all out. And one square fit over the other. And you nailed them.
That was your boat.
And they had a heel or a shoulder that kept them from collapsing, or because they were set down just like notch, you know. And then of course you had the posts that you dug holes in the ground and sat posts in. But a lot of times these jack fences, a bunch of sheep would get scared and try to jump it from the wrong side or something, or run into it and started upsetting, and it would upset for a quarter of a mile or a half a mile, just like a bunch of dominoes, just keep going over and over and over.
Was
And
a jack fence just like a stake and rider fence thing?
Yeah,
Were they the same
similar.
thing?
Then they made the worm fence,
Yeah, we've seen some of those.
and they were made by putting the logs this way and then this way on the next panel and so on. Then they made the block worm fence, which had blocks Your logs were notched down over them or in them, and they were square corners. One would step over here, and the other would step back and go the other way. Back, go on. There's a lot of those fences west of Stanley. They were made out of about three big logs. They were 4 or 5 feet high.
Seems like
But they rot out eventually. They last longer than a post set in the ground that isn't treated by quite a bit. They'll last 15 to 18 years without dry rotting. And eventually they will rot, and the snow will mash them down and break them and curve them and everything else. But they last considerable longer. There's a lot of work to them. There's a lot of work to any fence, really.
Seems like they take up an awful lot of ground too with the worm.
Oh yeah, yeah they do.
I was
Yeah.
just wondering about a couple of cabinets that we've been looking at. The Ellis's.
Yeah, that's the old Aiken place. I went to school there. It was one of the first schools in this area. I went to school there, and Mrs. Foley was my teacher, and we drove from the ranch, my sister and I, and we're never late or absent.
How old is that?
Oh, I don't know just how old it is. It's 1908 probably.
Really?
Pretty well preserved.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they've taken care of
I'll get you right now, Tony.
it. They've taken care of it since it was built.
Did the Aikens ranch there very long?
Well, they took it up sometime around 1908 or 9. And Shaw Ranch is another old ranch. And the old buildings over here on the home ranch. One building there was brought down from the Vienna mine. That was in the 80s that was built. Probably the oldest building around here is the one over on the old home ranch.
We'd really like to go take a look at it.
And we lived in it for many, many years. But it was a saloon at Vienna mine, and my father tore it down log by log and marked it so that he could put it up the same way that it came down.
How did they do that?
It happened to turn out to be the saloon who was owned by, which was later my stepmother. My father married Billy Castro's daughter from Custer.
Oh, we already do.
Sandy Brooks' house.
Sandy Brooks?
This is Linda.
Yeah, it's a log house.
Was it originally sitting there? Or-
No, he built it. He built it.
We'll have to have
Not too many years back. Not the time that we were building this one. I've got a log house on the end of this one. But it's all boxed in from the outside and the inside. The logs are beautiful. They're just as white and nice as these logs that's up here. They're peeled, and we just went ahead and built over it. A log house is a cold house unless you go ahead and finish it up. The cracks are only that thick, see. You put your chinking in, here's your log out here, but here's your crack in here. And it's hard to seal them. So we went ahead, and a lot of them stripped them, and put on paneling or knotty pine or various other inside finishes, Of course, now we've put on 7/8 cedar siding on the outside of this to make it look the rest of this. There's a frame building here, but the walls are 6.5 inches thick in this house here. 3 floors, 2 ceilings, with 8 inches airspace between them. But you can't hear anybody drive up out there. You didn't hear this car that just came in. You can't hear anything until you're in the dining room, and it's just a standard frame building. The walls are only standard. I had to have special window casings to fit here, and they thought we were nuts and sent us what they thought was right. And we had to build onto them in order to make them wide enough to come out, put your trim over your paneling and siding on the outside.
Interesting building. Going up Interpretive Road.
Yeah.
See, as you go up from Lower Stanley, you
Drop
go
over into the basin.
down-
Do you drop over into the basin? Yeah.
Do you know what that building is?
Yeah.
What is that?
It sits there on the left-hand side of the road, and it was a homestead building that was
This is my college roommate.
much later than the Shaw or the Aiken or the Williams Ranch. It was all older.
Guess who's here?
Oh, Arlie and Jack, how are ya? How's that?